You are listening to the Young Black Travelers Podcast, Black voices conversing on experiential travel, dedicated to creating a global community of travelers. Be bold, be inspired, be spontaneous. We are YBT.
Welcome to the Young Black Travelers Podcast. My name is Asshur Cunningham, and I am the founder of Young Black Travelers. And today, we are going to have an amazing conversation. We have a group of travelers. We all went to Kenya. Obviously, this episode is called Jambo Kenya. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. You're going to hear a series of conversation with them from our African adventure. But let's get some introductions going. So I'm going to go ladies first. And I'm going to, the doctor from Boston, Massachusetts. I think I said that right. Let her introduce herself. Come on, Doc. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sheina. Originally a New Yorker, but out in Boston for work. A lover of travel, culture, a foodie. And I'm so happy that I was able to join these amazing people on this once-in-a-lifetime experience to Kenya.
Yes, it was great to have you there, Sheina. Even though it was a short stay, but it was meaningful, right? It was meaningful. But let's go to the next lady in the South who lives down south in the big state. What do they call that state? The Lone Star State. Yes, come on, introduce yourself. Howdy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stella. You've heard my voice before on the YBT podcast. I am a fellow New Yorker. I moved to Houston about 4 years ago. So howdy to everyone. And I am so excited to talk to you all about our amazing trip to Kenya.
Yes, Stella, I'm so excited for this conversation. We had an amazing time, and y'all are going to hear all about it. So we'll go on with the introductions to get into this main conversation. And from right here in the Big Apple, the next guest is going to introduce himself. Come on, it's your time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am welcoming myself to the podcast because I am actually new to all of this. My name is Anthony R. Wilson, otherwise known as ARW, and I'm excited to go into this conversation today about our Kenya trip.
Yes. So as you know, you hear all three of them, they introduce themselves. We all went to Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, and Anthony went on to Ethiopia. And you're going to hear conversations with all these countries from each of us. But we're going to get into this Kenya segment. But, I wanted to ask the first question regarding the flight, So I wanted to know, was this the longest flight that you all have taken? Sheina, how about you?
No, this was not the longest flight I've taken. I've been to Japan, I've been to China, I've been to Thailand. So those would be the longer flights. But this was actually the first flight that I've taken where my layover was long enough for me to explore the airport, because I joined onto the trip a little later on. So I had to pick, kind of a bottom of a barrel flight.
Okay, all right. So that's a good response there. Anthony, how about you?
I believe that I did a flight to Hawaii that might have been a little longer. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to fact check that. But if it wasn't the longest, then it was the second longest.
Yeah. No, I think this one was a little bit longer than Hawaii. Hawaii is about, I think, 9 hours from here. But fact check quickly. Stella, how about you?
No, actually, I was about to say no, the flight to Nigeria is longer, but it's not. This flight was about 21 hours. So from Texas to Nairobi was about 21 hours. And to get to Nigeria, it's a bit shorter. It's about 13 hours. So this was my longest flight. Yes.
Yeah, I would say it was my longest flight. Anthony and I actually flew 21 hours as well, right? It's about 21 hours from New York to Nairobi. And we did a stop in Lome first via Ethiopian airline. Then we went from Lome to Addis Ababa, and then Addis to Nairobi, and all of that took 21 hours. It was. I think I had to hold myself together at a certain point, but it wasn't horrible. I think it was better than I expected. How about you, Anthony? What did you think about it?
So I was extremely tired. I had just been coming from meeting a ton of deadlines at work since I would have been out of work for a very long, extended period of time. So I was so tired that I really slept through most of our flight. I was sure to get up for the food breaks, and then I went right back to sleep. So it wasn't bad for me at all. Um, I think if I had not been resting and sleeping, it would have probably been miserable.
Yeah, and we talked about this on our trip. Like you were sleeping, I was up for a lot of it until probably I got to the last leg. But God bless you on that one. How about you, Stella?
I actually had an amazing flight to Kenya. I flew with Qatar Airlines,
About
or Qatar Airways, I should say, excuse me. And I took business class, actually. It would have been first class, but Qatar doesn't have first class to Kenya, so I had to stick with business class. And I will say it really is just as nice as what the first class would have been for that particular flight. But that plane didn't have first class options. Nevertheless, it was great. I really had a good time. The queue suites that you're placed in business class is very comfortable. It's very big. Like Anthony, I slept most of the time. I woke up to eat and also to drink. And then I just went back to sleep because the champagne will put me right back into a deeper nap. So it was honestly, it was a great experience. Everybody was super kind. And I would definitely do it again.
Good, good. All right, business class. You better go, Miss Money. Sheina, how about you? What airline and how was the experience?
I flew Delta, I believe. But my experience was, again, I'm not a fan of long layovers. And because I had to get my flight last minute, I had a long layover. But the airport that I had my layover in was so beautiful that I was able to kind of walk around, window shop, get something good to eat.
Come on.
And I am a sleeper on flights. I start the movie and I let the movie watch me. So overall, good experience.
Okay, but I think for clarity, I think you flew Delta from Boston to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam to Nairobi, you flew KLM, correct?
Yes, you are right.
Good, good. No, so listen, so she was talking, the airport she's talking about, her long layover was the Amsterdam airport. I think it's called Schiphol, however you say that. But, listen, I think one of our first tips for you is pay attention to the partners for different airlines. Delta and KLM are partners, so therefore when you're booking on airlines like Delta or KLM, it's not uncommon to actually probably fly one leg via Delta and the other KLM or vice versa. So definitely pay attention to those little things when you are booking your trips. So yeah, guys, stay tuned. We are about to go on break, and when we come back, we are going to get into this conversation about Kenya and our African adventure, the start of our African adventure. So stay tuned. So welcome back. So again, we are talking with Sheina, Anthony, and Stella, and we're talking about our trip this past summer of 2022 to Africa. For Sheina, it's just Kenya. For Stella, it's going to be Kenya and Tanzania, or Tanzania, as they said. You'll hear a little bit more about that. And for Anthony, it was Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. But for this segment, we are going to talk about the Kenya leg. And so, we just talked about our flight to Kenya. And literally, guys, we land. I think it was about, we got in about 1 a.m. And literally, we slept a few hours, and the next morning we were on a bus going to Masai Mara, which is the safari, which is one of the safaris that you can do in Kenya. By the way, there are many options for safaris. There are many companies that you can choose, but we did the safari to Masai Mara. It was scheduled to be basically the same day we landed. So Sheina, Stella, Anthony, first of all, let's talk about how long the drive was. Who remember how long that drive was to Masai Mara?
Was it 4 hours?
4 hours. It was 6 hours.
It was
6 hours. 6 hours. Yes. I think Ashley, you told us it would be 4 hours, but it was actually 6 hours.
Yes. It was
6 hours on a bada bada.
Yeah, so
go ahead,
for
Anthony.
all those of you listening, if you have someone like Asher spearheading your trip, fact check his distances, please. So yeah. Okay, good.
It was a bada bada experience.
It was so tell her what bada bada means.
It's the road.
Yes, bada bada. So is this actually a safari Swahili word?
I believe so.
Because Michael kept on saying bada bada. So if it is a Swahili word, bada bada means road, right? And so would you guys do, because there are two different ways to get to Masai Mara, by the way. So we told you it's 6 hours. Would you do the 6 hour drive again to Masai Mara, or would you take a plane?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think I would do the ride again. I really enjoyed the ride. I enjoyed the ride with all you folks on the recording. I would do the ride again. It's nice to see, right? It's like to see the country, see, how people are living as you're driving through. So it was great. I mean, we had a smooth ride until we got up into the savannah. That's when it started getting a little bumpy, but besides that, it was pretty smooth.
Yeah, literally. I mean, we drove on the paved road all the way up to Masai Mara, and then we got off, and that's when it got bumpy. But also, can we talk a little bit about, because there were different stops along the way, and our first stop was to the Great Rift Valley. And I thought this was impressive, right? Because I'd heard the term before. I think they talk about it in your science classes and all of that. But I don't think I honestly ever thought that I would actually see it. And the Great Rift Valley, by the way, extends from Jordan all the way down to Mozambique, right? It's this crack in the earth that basically we saw that goes all the way from Jordan in the Middle East to Mozambique. What did you guys think about that little pit stop that we did while we were driving to Masai Mara at the Great Rift?
So the first thing I'll say is that presently I'm looking at my picture. I'm standing in front of the Great Rift right now, and I look really, really great. But the Great Rift looked better. No, it was definitely, so I hadn't remembered. Now, remember, I'm the senior on the trip. So it's been a very long time since I've been in school. And so I don't remember learning anything about the Great Rift, but learning that day, how far it extended was definitely very interesting to see. But I think that the doctor might have a better illustrative idea of what she felt, because she was really taken aback by it. I remember seeing her soaking it in. Right, doctor?
Yes. So I always have a real deep connection with anything that's vast and of nature. So anytime I encounter that, it really I just soak that in, because it's just the beauty of it all and the beauty of the creator that created all of that. So that's the moment I have, just being in touch with nature and its vastness, and being this one person and looking at this okay, this is the bigger picture here. It was beautiful. And I agree with Stella. I would definitely 100% do the ride versus the flight. If I had to do it again, because there's something about the culture and the essence of Kenya that I got in that ride.
That is true. And I mean, as Sheina said, literally, there are different options that you could choose to get to Masai Mara in many different places. But when you drive someplace, you get to see how people are actually living and interacting. And we got to see that along the way, right? Like the Maasai people just in their Maasai cloth walking along the road, the cows walking across the road, like all of these things we got to observe and soak up. And then probably because this was our first day, actually, we were probably extremely in tune with a lot of it because we really wanted to see Kenya for what it was. And this was our first day's experience. So nonetheless, so now we get to Masai Mara. We get to the lodge. Can you, maybe Stella, just tell us, like, what was your first impression of the lodge? Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. My first impression was, let me see if I can find the right word. I was pretty amazed by it. I think amazed is a good word because I didn't realize how big it would be. The lodge, when you first drive in, there's this big space to your right, which is where all of the rooms are. And the rooms are a pretty big size. I believe we had 2 king-size bedrooms in our rooms, the room that Shay and I shared. And then there was still a lot of space there, and the bathroom was a decent size. But outside of the room, there's a walking trail, which I thought was very beautiful. And there was beautiful plants everywhere. And then there's also a pretty big, I would say, cafeteria where we were actually served free breakfast. And I believe lunch was also free. There was an area where you can get a good view of some beautiful mountains and some beautiful hills. And they also had a nice rooftop where there was like a game room there. And we sat there for a couple of days to hang out there. So there's definitely lots to do on the lodge. And like I mentioned, it's just really amazing to see how big it is. I guess I pictured something smaller. Now, I would say that this lodge is not located inside this Masai Mara savannah itself, but it's just a few minutes outside of it, about 10 minutes outside of it. And I think that's actually a good thing, unless you want the animals to walk up to your window at night.
Which some people want, right? So the lodge that we're talking about is called the Jambo Mara Safari Lodge. So, you know, generally how it works actually is your guides, if you book with a company, so we booked with Motherland Adventure, and we will talk a little bit about them a little bit later on, but they generally would book the lodge for you. And there are many different options. So we stayed actually in the mid-tier lodge. So there are luxury lodges as well, and there are budget lodges as well. So you have the chance to select the experience you want. And if you guys can remember to the podcast that Dave was on last year, Dave talked about, you know, it's not about money. A lot of times the budget option may give you a better experience than a lot of the luxury lodges, because sometimes with the luxury lodges, you may be away from the experience. But I thought we were close because you guys remember, like on our way out one of the days, we saw the monkeys in the trees. I've been looking for them all the entire time we're there, but we saw them actually one day. Did you guys remember that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I remember that.
Good. Anthony, tell us about the food, because I know you can be a little bit picky sometimes. How did you enjoy the food at Jambo Mara?
So, before we get to the food, these 2 ladies are singing the praises of Jambo Mara, and I really appreciate them. But let me tell y'all something. I know it was mid-tier, and it was only 10 minutes away, but they warned us about animals coming into our rooms at night. And we had this ceiling to floor glass door, right, in our rooms. And so at night, the place is pitch black and the electricity goes off at midnight. So I was having an issue on the beginning of this trip where I was not sleeping. So as soon as Asshur puts his head down on the pillow, we shared a room. He goes right to sleep. I, on the other hand, I struggled with sleeping. And the first night, I heard something clawing at the door. Okay? And I remember, I said, if something jumps in here, I'm jumping. I'm getting underneath Asshur, and whatever they do to Asshur is what's going to happen. I just kept hearing this thing clawing at the door, and I don't know what it was. And the next day, they told us that it could have been a monkey. And what was most terrifying about that was I was so paranoid about making sure that that door was locked. And do you know the next day when I checked that door, it actually was not locked.
Oh boy.
So if they had figured out how to come in there, y'all would have been burying me in the motherland. Okay? So I just needed to add
Hold
that
on,
to
before
it.
you go on the food, Anthony, I remember there was one night that it's probably the only time I actually woke up because I heard something and I heard Anthony said, Ashley, you hear that? I said, yes.
Yeah, and then when you look outside, everything is pitch black, right? Because they're conserving, so the electricity goes off at midnight. And so that part of the experience, I'd do without it. But it definitely was exhilarating. So now onto the food. Yes, I am an extremely picky eater. And at the time that we were traveling to Kenya, I was just, three-quarters of a way through my new vegan adventure, right? So I was being very careful about what I was eating. And we're gonna find out.
How long did that last, Anthony?
So here's the thing. Right? Here's the thing. Now you see, Doctor, I gave you a nice intro with the Rift Valley. You see what you're doing to me? It's all right. I'm gonna get you back. No, when I was coming to Kenya, when you're taking these trips, you're talking to so many people because you hear so many things, right? And you want to get as much information on what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you should eat, what you should stay away from. And so I had been talking with some people who are actually from that region. And they told me to stay away from, obviously, water. And they told me to stay away from things like, salads and things of that nature because everything is washed in the water. They told me I should actually eat meat and stay away from those kinds of things. So I was eating more meat because of that reason, because I was so terrified by everything people had said. But I have to say that of all my food experiences in Kenya, I thought that they did an excellent job with the complimentary food that they prepared at the Jambo Mara Safari Lodge. I think I enjoyed everything.
Yeah.
There were one or two things that I did not know, and I asked what it was, and there were some things that I didn't care for the consistency, but generally overall, I enjoyed all that food, right? I enjoyed the breakfast food. I enjoyed the lunch food. And didn't we have dinner there too?
We did.
I think we ate there.
did.
We ate 3 square meals there. Yeah. I enjoyed it all.
Wow.
So yeah, the food was good. The presentation of it was good. The place was very clean. And we had some really great gripping conversations in that common area.
Yes. We did. You know what? Listen, these experiences definitely bring people together. Obviously we were together all the time, right? So that's what it would do. It would bring us together. Or I mean, it could also make people like go at each other. But I think for this group, it really brought us together, help us to understand each other. Like we had a lot of heart-to-hearts in sitting there at those dinner tables and talking about a lot of our issues, which was really good. As Ant said, bringing people together. But let's go on. Let's move this conversation along. We stayed at the Safari Lodge. That's how we actually started this adventure. To note, our trip consisted of 2 drives. So they actually when you go on a safari, they call it a game drive, right? So Stella actually didn't know what game was.
I sure didn't. I did not. I thought we were going to play a game. Honestly and truly, let me tell you, audience, I had no idea what it was called.
That was hilarious.
So when they kept saying game this, game that, I'm like, where is the game? We're playing games with zebras. Like, what are we doing? I don't understand this game. How many points do I need to win? So I asked, and apparently everybody knew what it meant but me.
No, so game drives literally mean, obviously, game are these animals, right? Like they're game. So you go on 2 games. Well, our safari consisted of 2 drives, right? And actually, our first day when we got there, we went on an evening drive, which was just a few hours, right? And honestly, the sunset. And we'll talk about that. The sunset, I just felt like I was in The Lion King. Like we were in The Lion King, like the way everything that you see in The Lion King, we saw that evening. Like it was just like beautiful. And then the next day we had a full day drive. I mean, what time did it begin?
I think we started at like 9 o'clock in the morning.
I think it was
because we got up pretty early.
Probably was 8 o'clock because Michael was saying, "You guys are late. You guys are late. We need to
Let me
get."
tell you something. It was definitely earlier than
Was
9 and 8 because I am not a morning person, and yeah, so
Yeah,
it might have been 7.
it was early. Like so basically we went out early that morning and we didn't get back until late in the afternoon, which it was a long drive. So I'm gonna let Stella, Anthony, and Sheina talk about like their experience on the game drives. So how about you, Sheina? Start off what was your experience? What did you like and what was most outstanding to you?
I think from the very beginning, I mean, we came ready to experience. We had our outfits ready. Our driver of our Jeep was very knowledgeable and had done multiple game drives before.
Yes.
And just seeing the community that was out there, they were speaking over the radios, like there's a lion here, there's a cheetah there.
Yes.
And the animals were so peaceful. They were unbothered by us. They were so close, walking close to our Jeep, but I was not afraid at any point during the drive. And I think that just, again, the vastness of the nature and just its natural circle of life was amazing.
Yeah. Stella, how about you?
Agreed. I definitely felt like I was in The Lion King. We legit saw every animal in The Lion King. We were The Lion King at that point, you know?
Yes.
It was so beautiful. I mean, just seeing those animals up close and personal, like the zebras, the giraffes, I mean, just admiring different patterns. I know we've even noticed that different elephants, because some elephants were migrating. We were in a season of migration, and we saw different elephants coming from different areas of the country itself, and you can tell because they all looked a little different. So not only were we able to see these animals, but we were able to learn about them as well. You know, I remember we really wanted to see a lion, and we got to see the lion and the lioness on our second day. So that was cool. We got to see a lion like hunt down their prey and, you know, eat and enjoy his lunch and then put his prey to the side for dinner. So it was really good, you know, and then we saw some cheetahs. We also saw a jaguar, if I'm not mistaken. So it was honestly a great experience, once in a lifetime opportunity. I think everybody should experience a safari at one point in their life, because it's honestly a speechless experience, and I don't even think I'm doing my experience justice because you have to be there. And I would say one thing is that the company that we did it with, Motherland Adventures, shout out to them.
Shout out.
Our driver and as well as our tour guides did an amazing job with us. They made sure that we were in certain locations at certain times to see like the sunset, which was just to die for, to see different animals, right? We wanted to see, like, for example, like hippos, so they took us through this little pathway. We almost got stuck, but it was to see like the hippo and the crocodile. So they did an amazing job. They were extremely intentional, and I really appreciate it, and I highly recommend doing your safari trip in Masai Mara with Motherland Adventures.
Yes. Anthony, how about you?
So I definitely have to say that this was definitely a once in a lifetime experience for me. So the first thing is that I'm very spiritual. And one of the first things that I experienced was, I don't know if they call it like a metaphysical experience. I felt very, very close to God.
Wow.
As we were driving through the savannah, I just felt this connection that I had that I have never felt in my life.
Wow.
And I was pretty clear that it was God that I was experiencing. It was very peaceful. It was a peace that I've never experienced or seen or known. And even though I know that, like, right behind a bush, there's a lion that would probably devour me if I walked out there, it was almost calling me to like come out of the truck, which I would have never done. But it was almost calling me to like come out of the truck and walk. It was so peaceful, and I felt a very strong connection with God. And then as I observed the animals in their peace, it just confirmed to me that, this is the place of creation. That's what I felt, that I was on the continent of creation, and I felt a closeness to God there. The other thing was, I am like a National Geographic's geek on the low. So I'm that guy that sits in the house binge watching safaris, like people's safari experiences. So to have actually gone and been there, and again, shout out to Motherland Adventures, because I thought they did a superb job with just guiding us through this whole thing. It was just amazing. But yeah, it was great. We saw everything that we wanted to see. They even made us get out on the savannah and have lunch, which I was terrified about. And there were like strange amounts of bugs everywhere. But yeah, the whole experience was great. I'm still talking about it. I'm still, having like, even as I'm talking about it now, just remembering that spiritual experience, it was great. It was great. I'm definitely going to do it again.
Wow. Listen, I mean, you guys are hearing it from 4 people who've done this. You should definitely do this. I remember, honestly, and Stella talked about the guides and how like knowledgeable they are. Like, I remember like they were communicated to each other. I don't think I actually had gotten that from the beginning. But then you remember on our second day, by the way, we said this was a long drive, right? Even though it was long, it was still good, right? Because we left probably at 7:30, 8 in the morning, and we didn't get back until 4. So by the time we got back, we were really tired, and we probably needed to get in our bed, showered, all of that. But I remember on that second day, the guides were talking to each other on the radio, and they were basically telling each other where the different animals were. And when Stella was talking about almost getting stuck, you remember that time when I think there was a leopard in a tree, and so Michael wanted to make sure we saw the leopard. It was literally like we were on like these wild chases that you see on National Geographic. They were talking like they were going back with each other, and then he was just racing through the savannah to make sure we get to that leopard. I mean, this is, as Anthony said, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You need to do it.
Yes,
do it.
Agreed. And Ashley, you're right. It was a leopard and not a jaguar. Jaguars are not in Kenya. Sorry, listeners. I'm not like Anthony. I'm not watching National Geographic, but it definitely was a leopard, and the leopard was beautiful.
Yes.
Those animals are so beautiful. So.
Oh yeah, and I think what I know. So let's talk a little bit about this, because I think after the trip, a lot of people kept on asking me. Anthony talked about his peace, the peace that he felt. But let's expound a little bit on that, because people, I think, nonetheless are fearful to be, especially Black people, I think, are fearful to be in the wild, because in everybody's minds, lions are going to charge at you. You're in this vehicle. What is protecting you? And from the time they know that the top opens, they start asking all of these questions. What did you feel that your life at any point throughout this safari experience, Sheina, Stella, Anthony, did you feel that your life was at all in danger?
Not at all.
No, not at all. And that's coming from somebody who was actually really scared and nervous. I remember when Asshur first told me about the trip in general, and he mentioned his safari, I was completely against it. But I knew it was something I always wanted to do. So I just decided to do it. And the first day I was a little nervous, but I would say after being on the road for about 30 minutes, you get more excited and not necessarily nervous. And like I mentioned again, Motherland Adventures, our tour guide, our driver, I felt very safe with them. And they did a good job by keeping us safe as well. They would mention certain things like, stay silent. You remember what was his silence? I can't remember.
Maintain
silence. Thank you. Yes, he would say things like maintain silence as we got closer to a herd of animals, just so that we don't trigger them. So they definitely took some precautions to keep us safe.
Yeah, listen, listeners, I'm telling you, there's no need to worry. Honestly, I mean, lions, you're gonna be. I think in our minds we're gonna be fearful of lions, but honestly, I didn't expect to see these animals being as peaceful as they were in front of us. I didn't expect to see the lion just sitting there, the car right in front of the lion, and it not any noise coming from it, or it's not just running after the car. Like I think I thought about all of these things, but none of that happened. So I think we're all telling you you will be safe. So if
Now, wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
There was that one time though when the two cheetah brothers were looking very aggressive, and they did turn around.
They were looking at the zebras, not us.
Yeah.
No, but did you remember when they turned around and hissed at one of the safari vehicles? But they looked a little aggressive, so I wasn't really with it with them, with those two brothers. Those two brothers looked a little dangerous.
They did.
Yeah.
No,
they were so beautiful, though.
They were. And
yeah,
I think what they say about the cheetahs are the ones that are usually more inquisitive. So I think that's why they were the like everybody was basically chasing them or following them to see what they were going to do. Because literally, I think that was like outside of the leopard, the cheetah was basically the first action. Everybody was following the cheetahs because everybody thought the cheetahs were gonna go hunt, but they really didn't hunt anyone.
They were lurking on the wildebeest.
Yeah.
But the zebras and the wildebeest kind of stood together, and that was beautiful too.
Listen, nature. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful, 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 beautiful experience. You guys want to add anything before we get off of the safari?
Just prepare yourself for the ride in the vehicle. The ride is very, very bumpy. So when you're
let's
out
talk.
there,
okay, come on, we gotta talk about that because
yes, when you're out there driving on the terrain, let me tell you, I came with my Burberry bucket hat, and I was my Target pants. I was ready, but I was not ready for the bumping. The bumping. Oh my God! You got used to it after a while, though. But
I did not get used to it. I was.
Didn't Asshur lose his binoculars at one point?
Yes. Yes, my binoculars fell off the truck. But let me tell y'all, I mean, there are two different. So if you sit in the front of the car, which Sheina, I think, sat in the front the second day. So Sheina didn't feel the whole 8 hours of bumps that I was experiencing because I was in the back. So I guess the front is better. The back of the truck, oh my God. It was like a roller coaster. I mean, thank God I didn't get sick. But at a certain point, I felt sick. Like I felt like I wanted to throw up at a certain point because the truck kept on going up and down, up and down. But again, it's part of the experience. So as Anthony said, be prepared for that if you're getting in one of the safari vans. And by the way, there are different vans that go out on the road. But I think we had one of the traditional safari vans. I saw people were in like minivans out there. I can't imagine driving in one of those.
Yeah, we had one of those top open Jeeps, which is, tan and with the wheel in the back. It was very, typical of safari.
Yeah, those are the typical off-road vehicles. So probably when you're booking, make sure you are paying attention to those little details. Because honestly, I cannot imagine being on a safari in one of the white minivans that we were seeing. Because if I was feeling how I was in our off-road truck, I can't imagine how those people were feeling in those minivans. So definitely pay attention to that. So we want to say thank you to everyone who donated to the Young Black Travelers, a Child's Hope Charity and True Gospel Ministry drive for Shama's Children Home. Basically, we were able to donate close to or over $4,000 to a child to Shama's Children's Home. So, Sheina, Stella, Anthony, let's talk about the charity work. What was what was most impactful when we visited the home? What stood out to you the most? What did you leave with? How about you, Anthony?
So again, being a very spiritual person, this was definitely something that I anticipated. I think more than anything else on the trip, just what we were going to do, knowing that there was this home with these children, and that they were in need, and that we were going to be able to at least help in some way. So pulling up there, getting there, I really didn't know what to expect.
Mm,
Um, I really didn't have an expectation because, I didn't know. Definitely pulling up and seeing the conditions in which they were living in definitely humbled me.
mm.
It was a very humbling experience to see um, what these children and where they were living in. And it was a very quick moment of reflection, to what I have and to what the Lord has blessed me with. And so that was my initial reaction, just kind of taking in, what they have and what they did not have.
I agree. I think that on international trips this memorable, it's always good to, as much as you receive from the country, the culture, the people, the kindness, the food, to give back as well. And it was a highlight of the trip for sure for me to see just how much those children were loved. They were well taken care of.
Yep.
Even if, society would see that they don't have much in terms of material things, they had love in that home.
Yes.
Love for each other, love for their mom. They all called the
Olivia.
woman Olivia, who ran the orphanage, their mother. And it was just so beautiful to be able to go and to spend time with them, sing, laugh, hear their stories, sit next to them, and bless them. Definitely a highlight of the trip.
Wow. Thank you, Stella.
Yes, honestly, well said, Sheina. I would agree as well. I think so. I am the founder of a Child's Hope charity. And again, thank you to Anthony's organization and, of course, Young Black Travelers for putting together this collaboration to donate and support education within Shama's home, as well as provide essential needs. And my first impression was just the feeling of being welcomed. I think I've done charity work many times, and this was one of the first times where I felt that they really wanted us to be there. They were anticipating us. The children were very excited to feel our presence, to be within our presence, and we were as well. Meeting Madam Olive, who, like Sheina mentioned, is the I guess she manages the orphanage, right? She is their mother, as Sheina mentioned. She was just so happy, and I believe that energy is a real thing, and I just feel like the energy they gave off to us, we were able to match them organically.
Yeah.
It was a perfect match. Like our organizations and Shama's home was a perfect match, and I just loved being around the children. We sang together. We prayed together. A lot of those kids will be pastors, and
Yes,
by the grace of God,
yes.
we prayed together. We gave gifts, and we spent a decent amount of time with them, and it was just lovely to see how blessed and how happy they are, even though they are in impoverished situations. Definitely underrepresented. They were still very much loved and loved by God as well.
Yeah. Thank you guys for that. I mean, I think, Anthony talked about his reaction initially. And, I think for me, I honestly didn't even know what to expect. I didn't know, I haven't done charity to that magnitude before. So this was honestly quite new for me. And I remember when I walked, when the van pulled up on the dirt road, and then we got into the house, which was, barricaded by galvanized, we call it, or zinc. And we got into the yard. It was just, I was shocked by that. But then I think, in my mind, I was anticipating, especially if we were going to do a tour I was anticipating the worst. And even though, it may not be, the home wasn't, a brick or concrete structure, when you go inside the rooms, they're well kept and well taken care of. And I think that's when we all recognize the love that is in that place outside of what is shown, right? We walk in and we see that there is no smell in the rooms. It's just a well kept and well taken care of place based for what they have. And I think I was so appreciative of that. And to see that even through it all, those kids were still well taken care of. So again, thank you all for your donations. And we want to say that honestly, whenever you're traveling, think about what you can do to give back. And as Sheina said, it's not about what you're going to receive from a country, but think about how you can give. So maybe you're doing a 5-day trip. Think about the little you may be able to bring to impact a life along the way. So this was great. Thank you all. Thank you all for participating in that. We probably should have ended the conversation there, but we have a little bit more to talk about. I want to bring it to Sheina though. So let's pick up the mood a little. Sheina, I think after we came back from the charity or sometime along that, along the time we were there, we were staying at Sankara, and we'll talk a little bit about the Sankara Hotel a little bit later on. But right next to it, there is a mall. And Shane, I think after the safari, Shayna's nails were damaged. And, I can't remember if we're going out, whatever was happening. But Sheina was on the hunt to get her nails done. And I remember Sheina calling me, Asshur, you want to go get your nails done or whatever? Sheina, let's talk a little bit about our experience at the nail salon and meeting Margaret/Binda.
Oh, yes. Margaret was her name, right, Asshur?
Yes.
So there in the safari, everyone talks about the mosquitoes and how bad they are. So I made sure I came prepared with the most industrial strength insect repellents. But did that insect repellent, and I did not get not one mosquito by my entire trip. Mm-hmm. At least in the safari part. So it did its job, but it also did its job taking off my well done pedicure. So I was like, okay, we're in Nairobi now. We're in the city. We're going out to dinner. I want to wear my sandals. I cannot go out looking crazy. So I called Asshur and I said, I got to go over to the mall to get some nail polish remover and nail polish because I was planning on doing it on my own. But when we got to the mall, there was a woman by the name of Margaret, and she was closing up the shop. She was mopping the floors. And I just took a chance. I said, hi. I asked to just borrow the nail polish remover and the polish, again, ready to do it myself. And she was so kind. She put her mop down. She said, oh no, sit in the chair. I will do it for you. Pick a color. I said, are you closed? She's like, we closed an hour ago, but I will do this for you. And her kindness just speaks, it's just the trend of the trip is the kindness of Margaret and of Kenya. So I was able to get my toes back in order after being damaged by the insect repellent.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Binda, for that. That was honestly, we were in the shop just talking to Margaret, and she was just extremely kind. Thank you. And it just shows you, as Sheina says, the kindness of the people. The Kenyan people are extremely kind people. They're helpful all along the way. Yeah. And so, also one of the other places that we actually went in Kenya, Nairobi, to be exact, was an elephant sanctuary. And was it called the giraffe? It's not the Giraffe Manor. The Giraffe Manor is right next to the giraffe. What is it called? The giraffe. Stella, Sheina, Anthony, help me out here. Is it called the giraffe?
I think it's the Giraffe Sanctuary, no?
The Giraffe Sanctuary? Okay, we'll call it that. But basically, the Giraffe Manor, the beautiful hotel you guys generally see, is literally right next to the Giraffe Sanctuary. What was your highlight of going to either one of these places, Sheina?
Again, it's just being that up face and close with the animals. You're able to see how the elephants were being cared for The story, I believe, was these were elephants that either their parents had passed or there's like some sort of turmoil, so they took them in order to help to raise them, and then introduce them slowly back into their natural habitat. So we were there. We were able to touch them, take pictures. We were able to feed. When we went to the giraffe portion, able to feed the giraffes, and just watch how well taken care of these animals were. They were in their home, and we were visiting them.
Listen, again, all of these places are places you guys see on Instagram generally. So when you see these pictures of people feeding the giraffe, or people petting the elephant, or those swings where the giraffes are right behind, literally, this is what we're talking about, the giraffe sanctuary or the elephant sanctuary. So make sure you add that to your bucket list when you go. And I say when you go to Nairobi, Kenya, because I really believe everyone should visit Kenya and Nairobi one day. Stella, before we go to break, give us some of the restaurant recommendations, quick recommendations for our visitors, our listeners who would be visiting Kenya soon.
Okay, so I would definitely recommend, I'll just pick one. There's a restaurant called Jiko. I believe I'm saying that right.
Yes.
It's Jiko. And that restaurant was phenomenal. The food, I mean, we just sat there. We just kept saying, oh, this is good. This is so good. This is so good. Everybody had a great dish. Okay.
Yes.
The cocktails were made to perfection. Very well done. And the aesthetic so Jiko is actually in a hotel, and the aesthetics of the hotel was almost like a art museum. There's beautiful artwork all over the walls. There was beautiful structures in the hotel as well as the restaurant. And we actually got to meet the chef. We wanted to compliment the chef because the food was so amazing. The sweetest lady, I wish I could remember her name so I can give her a shout out, but she was actually very confused. She didn't understand why we were so excited. I felt like she's like, okay, this is what I do every day. What do you guys, what's the big deal? But her humility just spoke volumes. You can tell that this is what she loves to do. And it definitely reflected in each and every dish. So Jiko, highly recommend that area. And even the Sankara. I know I said I was just going to say one, but the Sankara Hotel had some really good restaurants in the hotel as well.
Got you. Listen, so we're going to go on break. Take these recommendations and honestly add them to your list when you go to Kenya, when you go to Nairobi, because we highly recommend that you do, and you do a safari as well. So we're going to go on break now. And when we come back, we're going to wrap this entire conversation up. So stay tuned. So welcome back. Again, we've been talking throughout this podcast episode about our trip to Kenya. Jambo Kenya. So hopefully you visit Kenya soon, and hopefully you've taken all of the tips and tricks and just everything that we've been talking about on this podcast, and you honestly put them into practice, because I'm sure they will definitely help you out. Definitely do a safari. Use Motherland Adventures. I guess I'm going ahead of myself. Like we do on all of our episodes here at Young Black Travelers, we take a moment to shout out, a follower, someone who is close to us, someone who's usually engaged. And today, like I was just hinting at, we are shouting out Motherland Adventures and Suave Day. So basically it's MOTHERLAND_adventures and Suave SAUVE.Dave. Listen, we all have echoed on this episode how amazing Motherland was, how amazing Dave was, the care they took to planning everything. I mean, they basically were extremely helpful throughout this trip, from the beginning of the trip when I was planning to the end. Dave ensured that we got all of the information, let us know the shots we needed, just so many recommendations along the way. So I am going to say to you, if you are going to Kenya and you want the safari experience, do reach out to Motherland Adventures. By the way, they do trips to Zanzibar as well. So if you want a safari and beach experience, definitely reach out to Motherland Adventures. They are our shout out of this podcast. But before we go, 2 last questions and then we're done. I wanted to ask Anthony because I knew he had an amazing, like he shout the praises of the Sankara Hotel. Anthony, tell the listeners a little bit about the Sankara. What did you like? Just tell them about the Sankara.
Listen, just from, driving into the compound, I knew I was in for a treat. I mean, obviously we had looked up where we were going. I knew that it was an autograph hotel, but the experience was great. The ambiance that it gave, even in the lobby, the courteous staff. Definitely a shout out to Nicholas. Yes. Nicholas from the Sankara Hotel was our guy who concierged us in, took care of us, made sure that we were comfortable, gave us tips on where to go, even the safest place to hang out and party. And in the end, hooked us all up with these wonderful keepsake figurines of safari animals that I still have now. Sankara Hotel was really a great experience. Even the food, the dining area, as Stella mentioned before, it was all top notch. And I was really proud to know that I was in Nairobi, in a hotel, getting this type of treatment that I haven't even experienced sometimes in hotels here in the US. So definitely a major shout out to the Sankara. If I'm ever in that area, that's definitely where I'm going. And shout out to my aunt, Dawn, who works for Delta, who had suggested that we stay at the Sankara. She travels and she goes there all the time. And she was like, you guys have to stay there. So shout out to her as well.
Anthony, you gotta say to the listeners how Aunt Dawn said it.
Boy, y'all got to go to the Sankara. They got the people them there. That's the place. And she was right. When I came back, I called her. I said, Auntie Dawn, you was right.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. Oh my God, Anthony kept on saying this all throughout the trip. That's what Auntie Dawn said, and we listened and we enjoyed the Sankara. But to Anthony, Stella, and Sheina, what was most shocking to you about Kenya or Nairobi? What was the one thing that was most shocking to you? To you?
I don't know. I don't think there was anything that was most shocking. Again, a lot of humbling experiences, for the whole Kenya trip. Definitely, what we did with the give back with the children was top of the line. And then the experience, in the Masai Mara. But I don't really think that there was any really shocking experiences. Mm-hmm. Maybe if I hear the others, it'll jog my memory.
I agree with Anthony. I don't think that there was anything where I was shocked, because for me, I see shock as maybe a negative, but if I were to take shock as a positive and turn it into maybe awe, I would say this experience I was the most in awe with was sticking my head out of the top of the Jeep in the middle of the safari, the Masai Mara Safari experience, watching the animals live and watching the sunset as we drove back to our lodge. Yeah. So I remember just being in awe and just having just beautiful moment there. So I think I'm gonna flip the question and change it from shock to awe.
No, so I say shocking because I think for me one of the most shocking moments or realities that I came to, particularly with Kenya, was just the temperature. And it's not a negative, it was just the thing that I literally did. I knew the temperature would have been colder, but it was just, that was shocking to me, just how, chilly, how cold it was. So I think,
what, Asshur? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. When we arrived in Nairobi, it was 54 degrees and I was not ready. And so that was definitely a shock. I don't think I did enough homework about what the weather would be like. So yes, you're right.
Yeah.
The weather.
Because we kept on saying, man, we didn't pack enough warm clothes, all of these things. Sheina, we were in that store at the mall before you left, and you were like, Asshur, get that long sleeve. You're gonna need it.
Oh, I told you to buy the sweater. I told you. And it was the weather was. There were days that we were able to wear, shorts, dresses, short sleeves, especially safari. But the weather was definitely up and down. So layer up, especially if you're going to go around the time we went, which was in August. So
yeah, and that is their winter. So do anticipate. Listen, word of advice, make sure that you pack warm clothes, because as Anthony said, the temperatures can dip to as low as 50 and probably even lower. But interestingly, in the daytime, it warms up. So you will have temperatures around maybe 70 or 60 something. So be prepared for that. And that for me was the most shocking thing about Kenya. But, as we end this podcast, I want to thank you, Stella, Anthony, and Sheina, for joining us today on this conversation. And hopefully all of you listeners do take a little bit of what was said here and actually use it. Probably book that ticket to Kenya, book that ticket to East Africa. But before we go, Sheina, Anthony, do you want to leave your Instagram handle or social media for our listeners to follow you? How about you, Sheina?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. It's inspired_truth, and I'm a lover of travel. So if that's the topic of our conversation, I'm always happy to chat.
Yeah. Anthony, how about you?
And definitely you can find me at ARW8096. Again, that's ARW8096. I'm a lover of many things. First and foremost, God, spirituality, but also fashion. So on my page, you'll find a lot of things relating to fashion, a lot of things relating to spirituality. And now I'm a returning lover of travel. So would be more than glad to engage some conversations around any of those topics.
Come on. Thank you. And Stella,
Yes.
how about you? Do you want to leave your Instagram handle for our listeners to follow you?
Absolutely. So my personal Instagram is Lady Stells, and that's with a Z. So it's LADYSTELLZ _ And my charity nonprofit Instagram page is A Childs, so that's with 'S, Hope Charity.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today on this episode of the Young Black Travelers podcast. And I want to remind all of our listeners to continue to support the Young Black Travelers podcast monthly by becoming a monthly contributor. You can simply go to anchor.fm/Young Black Travelers, and you can continue to support the Young Black Travelers podcast to continue to hear amazing stories like you've heard today. Also, on your trips in the new year, be mindful, be conscious of your surroundings. Also, continue to practice sanitary practices. Even though COVID, we may think that COVID is gone, keep the practices that we've learned, like washing your hands, or just different things to stay clean and keep viruses at bay, so we can continue to have, the experiences we had in Kenya going. And also, continue to stay safe. Have a happy new year and all the best. Take care. Goodbye.